And at that time, I became chairman of a group of that holds together Latin American telecom regulators. And through that, I learned about ICANN because ICANN, via Rodrigo de la Parra, who is Latin America's engagement vice president, was an observer person there. And he actually was one of the founders of Regular Affairs. That's another story. So I got into this ICANN world and started learning about it and want to know more. And I do these MOUs. Rodrigo brokered an MOU with prior ICANN president Chehade, Fadi Chehade. And then Fadi had to leave. And I said, oh, I lost my contact in ICANN. All of a sudden, they named Goran Marby in ICANN as president and CEO. Well, one thing that had happened when I was chair of Puerto Rico's Telecom Board and chair of Regulatel is that I got invited as representative of the Latin American telecom sector to BEREC. BEREC is the body of European European regulators of electronic communications, which is a type of, I would describe it as a proto-supranational regulator. It's really an advisory organization in Europe, but Goran was the chair of BEREC, and I went to that plenary and I met Goran, and then Goran is named ICANN president.
I follow you.
So then, all these things happen that are, I don't believe in anything, and things start falling into place. So thanks to the people from .pr, ICANN had agreed that to make an ICANN meeting in Puerto Rico. You brokered it, you pushed it, and it was said, it's going to be an ICANN meeting in Puerto Rico. And then Zika happens, and there's no ICANN meeting in Puerto Rico. And we said, shit. You
did say that.
I did say that, and
to my face.
And everybody worked so hard. .pr, all the stakeholders, ICANN itself. There was money spent, but the data said that things were bad down here. Data that I never, Anyway, that's another question. But from the truth out there was that things were bad, because Zika was so bad here. I said, so actually during that time, Goran made the point to call the stakeholders out here and say, I'm sorry, which was wow. Okay, so who's this? Wow, Goran, really, thanks. He called, and then ICANN started saying, no, we're going to still have that meeting. We're going to have that meeting. We're going to have that meeting. And then Irma and then Maria hit. And I said, wow, if they didn't come for Zika, they're going to come after Irma and Maria. And then at an ICANN meeting, Goran says publicly, I think it was in the public forum, that he said, we're going to go to Puerto Rico, and now is the perfect time to go to Puerto Rico for many reasons, including spending our money there. And that really touched all of us. Gave a new meaning to the ICANN meeting, and it's also one of the main reasons why NASIG happens, because NASIG is really an effort by stakeholders in Naralo, in Puerto Rico, .pr, Eduardo, Pablo, and that's another story. All this situation, all this NASIG work has helped. I saw Puerto Rico and .pr work closer together, that they were working as close before. So that's another good story there. So all these things started happening. So I just want to say thank you, because NASIG wouldn't be possible if ICANN wasn't here, and ICANN would not be here if you weren't at the helm. So a hand for Mr. Goran Marby.
Well, first of all, this is my first time here ever, and I'm really happy to be here. It's been yes, I have defended this decision to go here, but this is the ICANN spirit. We want, the importance for me in my decision was that we don't want to come here to help. We will come here so you can sell something to us, because you can do that. So I actually said that, let's go and spend some money. And shit, we are. Anyway, thank you for having me. I'm honored to be here. I love those occasions. I hope it's okay that I sit down here and not up there, because it becomes so boring for me to have something in between. That was not a joke. I have worse jokes than that too. So my mission here today is to, in my own words, describe what ICANN is and talk about the sort of the governance model we have. But I also hope that this could be an interactive session, and you can ask me any questions. Then you will see if I actually will answer them or not, but you can ask me any question about anything. But let's give me my story about what I'm here for. So it's actually very, in a way, it's a little bit symbolic for me to be here, because this is actually 2 years since I was first introduced to ICANN. I came to a meeting we had in Africa in Marrakesh, and met my team for the first time. I started a little bit later, but this is the 2-year anniversary from my first ICANN meeting. And I don't know, for any newcomer coming into an ICANN meeting, it is an insane experience, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. We're doing 299 sessions during this ICANN meeting, and it's not the big meeting. And this is my first speech, and I'm going to give I don't know how many I'm giving for the next 5 days, 30, 40 speeches or something. But the reason I'm doing this is because I happen to believe that internet as a thing is something that enables a better world. With all the discussions we're having about policies, and especially now there's so many talks about the bad side effects of internet, I happen to believe that the internet is something that's really going to change societies. Because by internet you can connect people, and when you connect people, something magical happens. This is not something that is a theoretical thing. This is why I do what I do, and I'm honored to be a part of this thing. It's called the internet. ICANN is not the internet. There are people who think that, but we are not. What we are is the user interface to the internet through the domain name systems. You all use what we do all the time. You send an email, you have an IP address on the other end. You use the domain names. All of those things originate from ICANN. ICANN is not alone in this. We're one of the ecosystems. We're together with our technical partners, with the ITFs, with the RERs, the CCs, and everybody else. We're all part of a unique ecosystem. And let me spend just a couple of minutes about this ecosystem. One of the fantastic things when the founding mothers came up with this whole ecosystem was to make sure that we actually have to work together. No one can tell in the other parts of the ecosystem what actually to do. It's forced for us to work together. So the process by itself is actually multi-stakeholder itself. We have to work together with our friends at ISO. We have to work together with our friends in the CC community. We have to work with our friends in the RER community. We all have to work to make internet work together. And I think that's a unique setup. Personally, I also think that that's the only reasons why, we all come from a university world where internet was sort of developed, and that's how they worked at university. And they really started this. In my office back in LA, we have rooms of people that no one has heard about. Klein Rock, Pastel maybe, Steve Crocker, who was actually former chair. People who really invented this thing, and they are the ones to thank for setting this up. So ICANN is not the internet, but we do produce the user interface for the internet through the domain name system, because that's how you get access to information. We got nothing to do with what's on the internet and how it's evolving, but that's what we do. So we're a small but important part of how internet works today. But here comes the really interesting question for me. What is the internet? Well, for all of you, internet is different, isn't it? If I look at my kids, my youngest is 15, and the way I use internet, and my mother is 87, who uses internet as well. They have totally different perceptions of internet, and they use it for different things. But today, internet is sort of part of everybody's life. Or may I say, for people who has the opportunity to be online, because not everybody is online. I'm going to come back to that a bit later. But for all of us, internet, we use internet differently. It's anything from your banking, education, or according to my speechwriter, I'm not allowed to make this joke, so I do it every time, your love life. Well, it's all there. That means that what we do cannot be hijacked by a company, an organization or a government or anyone else, because it hits every aspect of your life. And no one should be able to control what we do from one agenda. That's why there is a multi-stakeholder model. The multi-stakeholder is a very young model, and we're not done. It's still evolving. We don't know what it's going to take us. But it's, for me, set up in a way to make sure that all aspects of how you use internet can be taken into account where the ICANN community makes the decisions. And everybody who's been involved knows that it's sometimes a fairly hard process. But it's important to have everything from civil society, representatives of the end users, the business community, and also governments, and everybody has a place at the table to be able to make decisions, because the decisions on the other end could actually have an effect on the internet itself. That's why we use the multi-stakeholder model. But for anyone who comes into this, always remember, but it's like the internet itself. When you enter the multi-stakeholder model, you have a choice. You can actually change how it works, because it has to evolve. A lot of people around the world seems to think that we're done. Yeah, it works. You know, we have access. It's sort of, you know, I can get access to what I want. There are some bad things about it. We don't have to spend any more time on this thing called the internet or the ecosystem around it or anything else. The thing is that we're not done yet. We are not done. I mean, today we have about 3.5 to 4 billion users out there. And I would claim that they are, I don't even know how they calculate it, to be honest, but let's assume it's 3.5 billion users. I claim that they are the elite. I claim that these are mostly people who are coming from cities, who have enough money, and they understand English as a concept, for instance. They are really the people, because what happens is that the people can afford it actually get access. The new UN goals is that more than, I think it's 1.5 billion people needs to be connected until 2023 or something. Those people is not going to be where I come from in Sweden. Everybody's connected there. It's going to be people primarily in South America, in Asia, and in Africa. That's where they're going to come from. And they're going to have mobile connection primarily, because that's how it evolves. They don't know how to read from left to right with a dot in the middle. Just to have a dot is a very unique thing. So one of the big tasks we have within the ICANN community to work together with our other partners is to make sure that we can get connections and have more people connected. Because people are smart. They will only go online if they see the uses of it. It's not like they go online because they want to see YouTube all the time. People who can't afford to have luxury will only go online if they can see the need for doing that. And we need to help them to see that need. And one of the most important for that is, funny enough, the domain name system. Because it's only when a country gets connected and you have local content, and you have in your local script or your local language, when your municipality is connected, when your hospital is connected, that people see the benefits of it. So we're there. So we spend a lot of time and investments in what we call IDNs and local scripts for that purpose. It's not because we think that the system as itself just needs to evolving. It's actually to get people connected to what we call the internet. Because in the end, it's about connecting people, create some value. That's why I do this work. That's why the multi-stakeholder model is so important. And that's why ICANN, it's its own technical remit, is so important. Are there threats to it? Yes. Or opportunities, depending on what side you look at it. One of the funny things with this is that this theory of internet came up at the end of the 60s. We're actually basically working on a technical assumptions that was done before even the iPhone was there. And we should always challenge ourselves about the technology and our model to make sure that we always provide the end users of the world what they need. It could be an alternative to the ICANN model. It could be something else. We should always ask ourselves the questions, are we doing the right thing? Are we still on track? Or have we sort of formed ourselves into something that becomes just another institution? And I challenge everybody who comes into this from a new perspective to ask themselves the questions. Is our mission right? Are we doing the right thing? Are we looking into the right questions? To really make sure that because the involvement of internet will make sure that people will change the behavior of the internet. And there are many that there are alternative technologies, new business models, 5Gs, and all those things happening, they can actually make a threat to the open and interconnected internet. I'm going to end this one with one notion. One of the unique things with the internet is it's also one of the biggest advantages, but also one of the biggest disadvantages, because internet is global. ICANN is about the interconnected internet. Internet means that if you put something online here, it's visible for everyone in the world. That's good, but it doesn't take into account a lot of local history, local culture, and local way of looking at things. And another thing is, apart from doing the technical work of the IDNs or the local scripts, we need to understand, because it's people on the other end, so we can combine this global internet with also respecting much better what is local or regional. The world is regional, people are regional, and that's not always a bad thing, because that's taking into account history. On the other hand, the technology is global, and we need to be better of understanding the local needs as well going forward. So there's a lot of challenges going. There's a lot of unanswered questions going forward. Now I open for questions because it becomes much more fun for me. Any questions? Please. Yes, please.
Yeah, so this is my first time in ICANN, and I'm really excited, but there's something.
Can we share the mic? I'll give you another one now.
Of course we can share the mic.
There you go.
So, this is my first time in ICANN.
Welcome.
Thank you. I wanted to ask this because I was going to actually ask someone already, but since you're here, I'm glad. I usually have my seizure alert service dog with me.
Yeah.
She's taking a vacation because she got her shots done this week, but I was wondering if she's okay since she has all her registration.
I don't know.
TP and ICANN, yeah.
We have had those service dogs before. I don't think there is an issue with that. I'm hyperallergic.
So there's an issue.
That's an issue. But I take pills for that. And I usually do when I go to ICANN meetings anyway. You should know that this is my first day at ICANN. And this is minus, which day is it? -2?
Yeah.
I started my ICANN meeting at -4. If on Wednesday, you're going to see that everybody who now looks very healthy is going to all look like we need a service dog. I promise you.
This is true.
Who's next?
Can I make a comment about this? And I'm going to be serious. I don't want to make it. This thing that ICANN is not a membership club. This thing that I often get questions about that. Can I participate? And you can just walk in to an ICANN meeting, and you can walk up to a microphone, and you have the right to say what you think. And if you get enough people to agree with you, you can change what I do. ICANN consists of 3 different parts. It's the org, which I represent, which is really there to facilitate the discussion, make sure there's coffee in the rooms, and implement what the community decides after the board has enacted it. So the community is like our parliament. It's just that you don't need a membership. There are people who always says that we should be a membership club. We should have, but we have decided, the community decided, you can just walk in. And it's easy for me to say, I'm a Swedish white man. Everything has been easy for me. Are you Swedish? You are? Oh shit.
Not the minority anymore.
That rarely happens. Vi kan prata svenska då.
Shaking.
Thank you. Okay, good morning everybody.
It is important that everybody can feel welcome coming into it.
I would like to know what is your thought about the net neutrality. Interfere with the vision of the actually, I don't know much about it.
He asked about net neutrality.
Yes, sir.
When I was a regulator before, I had a lot of opinions. Now I don't. And there is a reason for that. The community has decided what ICANN mission is. And this is one of those lines where this is my law book. And ICANN is not a political organization. We are a technical organization. What we provide is the IANA services and the policies for the domain name system. And if we would have used, we have ISOP, for instance, which is in our ecosystem, the political policy arm. They will have opinions about it. I bet they have. But for us, in our mandate, it's important not to have it. What we look at, where we enter into the political process, is often related to things that can have an effect on what we do. I'll give an example. There is a European legislation right now called the GDPR, which is about data privacy. We don't have any opinions about the law itself, but we are working on the effect of that because it will have a dramatic effect on the whole system. And we engage with local parliaments around the world and just look at a piece of legislation saying this could actually have a problem with the interconnection of the internet. But as long as it's not having a problem with the interconnection of the internet, we don't have an opinion. Or at least I don't, you probably have.
Can you comment on the Academy participation in ICANN discussions? Are they participating in a significant way, or should we be maybe participating?
The standard answer for me is please participate more. You need the academic view on this as well. But also that ICANN comes out of an academic, the academic surrounding. This was created at universities. The first people who ever got connected on the internet was another university. I personally think that it's important to academia to think through the next step, to think a little bit. And we are not that good, and maybe we need to be better at this. What does it actually mean? Everybody talks about the opportunity to make money on the internet. Everybody talks about it's going to change society and create new business models. I think that we spend too little time of actually understanding what this means for society. And that their academia has an extremely important role. What's going to happen with the national state? What's going to happen with the boundaries between, or the connections between people on the internet? So I would appreciate, we do spend a lot of time, and we actually fund sometimes, even if we have a very small budget, some research projects because we think it's important to actually think about what's going to happen next.
My question is a little bit about that, but I wanted you to elaborate about the cultural consequences of the protocols, and because since ICANN regulates and is very participative in the policies and everything, I just wanted to understand how is that studied or how is that conveyed in ICANN meetings, or it's my first time too, so I just want to understand further.
Oh, you will understand less. That's not because you're probably much more smart than I am. It's just that the processes of ICANN are interesting. We are not a regulator. That's important. What we actually do is a voluntary system. We can't tell any government around the world what to do. We can't tell anyone. We need to get people inside the room and they agree to do certain things. So, and that's strange because there is no real model like this around the world. And people, I don't have the powers to tell people what to do. They have to accept what the policy is, for instance, a policy coming from the community. During the community work, you're going to love acronyms after this. We love acronyms. We have an acronym for acronyms. We actually do. If we have something that it's easily understandable, we make sure that we make it very understandable. Yeah, everybody who's been to an ICANN meeting knows that. Between us, that's why I now have new project names, like Hubba Bubba, or Grizzly Bear, or the new model for compliance with GDPR called Calzone. Yeah, try to make acronyms of that one. Yeah, I have a very bad sense of humor. The thought process is that when a PDP is done, or a policy for the domain name system, by having all those different groups having the opportunity to measure against each other. So we have civil society, police forces, contracted parties, as we call them, in the domain of industry, they all come together and talk about things. And that's the way to sort of carve out the differences. A part of that, I mean, this is not a perfect science, because we are the first one in the world really doing this way. I mean, this meeting here, we're going to have, I don't know how many people, we're going to have at least representatives from 130 countries coming here, with all different backgrounds, all different agendas or anticipation. It is through that process. But also remembering that it's a compromise thing. That means that most people don't get what they want. So there will always be someone who's angry on the other side. But that's a part of the model. And interestingly enough, ICANN has, over the last 20 years, through the institution, has been able to solve out a really complicated issue that no one in mankind has been, no one has seen those. No one has done those things we've done before. A lot of the things we do, there is no answer to the question before. We are facing things, or you are facing things, that no one has challenged before.
Who's next?
You.
I have,
No.
I have fun.
Hello, thank you for coming to speak with us. I actually have a question about the ICANN History Project. Is there some updates on that and what's going to be happening around that? Is that currently, so the work I do is historical nature, and so I'm interested in some updates that you might have, around that project, or other folks to speak to about it.
Yes, we have started a process, and to some extent it's because of time. Some of the people who we are very grateful for is now getting older.
Can we just lift your microphone?
Okay. I really love this. How are you doing?
Is that better? Try again.
Should I talk now? Is it better?
Sure. Thank you.
I'm still thinking of starting talking in Swedish now. Oh, impressive. He has said something to me in Swedish.
Why not?
I always claim that I'm a minority. Portion man. Yeah. To answer your question, so we started the process, but because this is also sort of in the way we do things, we don't want to judge. So we started the interview process, where we're interviewing somewhat, if they excuse me now, old-timers about specific parts of our period, especially the creation of ICANN, leading up to what we call the transition, when the US government relinquished its last clerical supervision of ICANN. Well, we also discovered something during this process, or I did, that we lack a fundamental thing, and that's actually a depository for all our documents, which is sort of funny. So we are fixing that. So we have a project right now to build something. We're actually building something as boring as a document management system. The problem is that we right now have about 130,000 documents lying around, so we're in the process of using IA technologies and stuff to make sure that we can get all those documentation back together. And we're spending about $5.5 million to build a documentation management system, so you can actually find something on the web, which I personally think we should have done 18 years ago, but we didn't, so here we are. It's a major investment. And we do that because we want to increase the possibility for PDP work, but we also do that to create the history of ICANN. And it's going to take, it takes years to do this. But I think right now that's what we focus on from the story. But keep beating me, you've done that before, and every time we meet, same question.
Let's have a different question.
I do remember you.
And this is an amazing opportunity.
So, you don't know about this, but the
There's a lot of things I don't. There's a lot of things I
session
don't.
right before you by Tim Unwin presented how the internet could be making things worse for humanity. The jury is still out. I think Tim is more convinced that it's really making things worse. But you come, I think, Goran, with a more optimistic view. But I've heard you say, You don't want to share too many opinions, but I would like to know your opinion. I know ICANN does. What are the things that ICANN does that make the world better? That's a good question.
I mean, as I said, when people ask me why I took this job, it's because I'm a true believer in the internet. Yes, there are bad things, and I think that one of the things we're seeing now is that, and I see this because I also meet a lot of governments, is that elected parliaments in democratic countries have started to wake up to realize that internet is something that changes society. And I think that I always say that elected parliaments or politicians has the obligation, if something like this happens, to look into it. And of course they then start looking at what is bad, because it's sort of hard to change what is good. And therefore we see, and I think there are good discussions. Privacy is a very important discussion. You may have any opinion about it, but it's an important discussion. Cybersecurity, when the worlds get connected, when your power plants get connected, what happens when it gets disconnected. I think it's an important discussion to have. Algorithms that produces results depending on your search results. One thing I always say when I give classes about things like that, I always say that I have only one wish. That is that you clean your web browser every day. Do you want to do an experiment? Clean your web browser, go into another IP address, and make a search for barbed wire. I don't know if you usually buy barbed wire, and you do that a couple of times on a search engine. And then you go into another country's newspaper, and you're going to get an ad for a barbed wire on that newspaper.
Yeah.
It's
You haven't checked out barbed wire to it.
or anything else that you might not usually search for. So, to the point, there is many things that we have to discuss, and I don't think you can say it's bad about the internet, but we have to evolve as a society or several societies about some of those questions, because it's going to have an impact on society. We often look upon it from a sort of a negative side and take in the negative discussions about it. But I know that I made a FaceTime call to my mother who's in hospital this morning. And it can't be a bad thing that I can do that. Well, she lives in Sweden, I live in the US, and she uses Skype to connect to her. That can't be a bad thing. So I think that we should, there are always pendulums. I'm old enough to know there's always a pendulum in all discussions. Right now the pendulum is about the bad things, but when I give speeches to politicians, I say to them all the time, yes, there are things that are bad, but you just sent an email to your kid. How can that be bad?
It's not bad, it's privileged.
So
That's another way of saying it.
Yeah.
So Goran, it's Marilyn. I'm going.
Oh, hi, Marilyn.
Surprised.
My name is Marilyn.
Oh, it is.
Yes.
Your reputation precedes you.
Thank God, it took me 20 years. I'm going to make a follow-up comment about something you just said that builds on something I said yesterday. When we were introducing the narrowband internet to the world, and we then were trying to work together to introduce the concept that led to ICANN. There were 147 million users on the internet worldwide. 11 countries contributed to that number as being a big enough number to be counted. We had to go to meet with, we call our parliamentarians legislators in the US, but we had to go and teach them about the internet by teaching them how to use email and really decode how the technology worked, because they were going to make very, very important decisions. And one of the things you just said that I find missing, and I don't mean, this is the School of Internet Governance, so I'm not talking about it being missing at ICANN as much as I'm talking about it being missing in the internet governance discussion. I think we are missing parliamentarians, we're missing jurists, and we're missing scientists and engineers. And I wanted to just kind of throw that out to you because my experience is that when you go in and talk about technology and what it can do and help to inform the elected parliamentarians, you actually help to make sure they make at least informed decisions instead of reactionary decisions.
Oh, if I may comment, one of the projects we're actually doing now is that we're going to release that very soon, is that we are, through our multi-stakeholder model, we are assembling legislative proposals around the world that can have an effect on the domain name system. And we're going to just provide that information to the community to know about. I mean, take GDPR as a very good example. Or take another example. I don't judge about the legislation itself. That's out of my scope. There is a new proposal for e-privacy coming out of Europe as well. So we are doing a technical study of that, not because we have any opinions about the actual one, but they're using wording to can actually disconnect the interconnection of internet. That I think we need to, I see my job is to provide that information to the community so the community can react upon it. And there, if they want to engage in it, I'm not going to engage from that. But that's one of the things we're trying to do, to provide the community with more information about it. Because we don't want to get, we don't want to be off-guarded like something like GDPR. And I don't mind the GDPR, it's just that we are doing in 6 months something that we should have been doing for the last 4 years. And that keeps a little pressure on me personally. So I agree with you as always. And for the record, it's very hard for me to ever disagree with her.
Hi, Goran.
Hi.
Some of the students here will be attending ICANN for the first time next week. What are your top 3 tips for them to get the most out of the involvement in the community? Apart from getting a lot of sleep.
Yeah.
Now.
It's so easy to get drained into ICANN on specific small items. You're going to be exposed to many people with different opinions. And it's so easy to go down. Don't forget the goal of all of this. The processes are set up for transparency, for accountability, and sometimes we spend a lot of time about the processes themselves. And there are many people who will always, rightly or wrongfully, say that they are experts on the process or something. So I'm trying to always, when I go into those, I'm trying to think about what is the end purpose of this. That's one of them. And the other thing is that, and this is harder maybe, your voice counts as much as anyone who's been here for 30, 100 or 200 years. And it's just and your voice is actually, when you walk into the room the first time, you have the right to say what you think. You have the right not to know everything. You don't need to understand. You still have the right to say what you think. And you will meet people who's been, oh, I did this 15 years ago, or I love the quote, I know Pastel, which is one of our gods. But internet was not, 5 years ago, internet was not the same thing as now. Yeah. And your internet is unique, and you have the right to do that. So I would say, stay on, don't forget what we can do here, and be brave. And I would add one more thing: have fun. Yeah. It is. This is fun. I love the ICANN meetings. I actually do.
That's not just for the parties.
Oh. No.
Sorry, one more question. My name is Rashid and I'm a first-time attendee and a fellow. I would just be interested to find out what your opinion is, and I know you said you were going to share your opinion. So what is your opinion, or what do you see, how do you see ICANN dealing with the Amazon issue?
Yes. This is a good question, and it sort of shows how hard this could be. Historical fact: there was a Portuguese conquistador who came to a part of what we now call South America, and he met a tribe of very strong women. And after he killed and raped them, I don't know his order, he as a sign of respect for that tribe, because we're female born, he calls the whole area Amazonas, after the Greek word for a strong woman. And then a company comes around who has the idea of having a lot of small suppliers bringing into one big river, and therefore call it Amazon. And now the question comes, who owns that word? No one has ever, and it's not as simple as to say it's a trademark, because the company, Amazon, actually had the trademark of Amazon in those countries. But how do you figure that out? So the answer to it, we are letting the parties, the 8 countries and the companies, and under my facilitation, having a serious discussion how to work it out. Because it's not, I know there are strong opinions about this from every side. And what we're doing is that we're putting people, the countries together with the companies together, and talk about a potential solution. That's the answer.
Goran, I'm going to hand you the microphone back. It's Marilyn. I'm actually, since you said you couldn't disagree with me, I'm actually going to challenge you just a bit. I think that actually there's something more to this story than the Portuguese conquistadors killing a tribe of strong women. I think there's something called the Amazonian Basin, the Amazon River, the Amazon Forest, and the Amazonian people. And I think that was missing from...
No, that's where it started. My story is, they have a name for a reason, and that's the reason. And then they got the name. And then there was a company. Totally, it's sort of connected and disconnected, but that's the way it is. So this is the typical multi-stakeholder model. Let people see it, work it out. Has it taken a long time? Yes. But our Government Advisory Committee asked me to facilitate the discussion between the parties, and it's actually happening right now. That's the only way, because there's not a simple answer to it.
Are you suggesting that it's going to be a mediation resolved via a mediation process?
You're more formal than we are. There is a precedent right now.
I'm a lawyer.
Yes. Then you're really going to enjoy working with ICANN. The way we do it is that we have the reason why we are actually doing any sort of discussion is out of respect for people living in this region, as well as respect for a company. They never thought about this. As many, well, I can give you many names that we can think is no problem, but there could be problem for a region. We have halal, Persian Gulf, yes. I mean, there are certain that can have a totally different meaning, that's what I talked about, this global and local. So the way we're trying to, the specific Amazon case is that we were actually, it's not a bit, you use words that's like, negotiations in that sense. What we do from ICANN or my staff is to support a conversation happening with